You know, it's officially called an extraordinary session, but lately they haven't been so extraordinary. They seem to be more ordinary. For the third time in 7 years, Idaho's lawmakers will reconvene outside of normal business hours after the ordinary 3-month-ish meeting at the beginning of the year. And like all other extra verses, this song will have a specific structure. No freewheeling solos allowed. Legislators are going to meet and debate and then vote on a package that includes tax cuts and investments in Idaho education. There's also a third leg to that stool, another tax rebate for Idahoans to help address inflation, we're told, something that could happen as soon as September if the lawmakers approve it. So a question we've had, as well as several of you, is how reintroducing money back into Idaho's economy could impact local inflation. Will this be a productive move, or is it merely a political power play before an election? Here's Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris.
By the end of this week, the state of Idaho could be preparing to send another round of rebate checks to Idaho taxpayers. The proposal, a tax rebate of 10% of tax amounts paid in 2020 or $300 for an individual filer, whatever amount is greater. Now, that idea was announced by Governor Brad Little late last week. This week, Idaho lawmakers will vote on the package that includes those rebate checks, as well as other income tax cuts and investments into Idaho education. This is all in the name of addressing inflation, something that Idaho families have struggled with for months. University of Idaho economics expert, Professor Stephen Peterson, he explains the real impact of more than 8% inflation on the average Idaho family.
There would be a loss of purchasing power of about $5,000 for a typical family as a result of the inflation.
Over the past few years, there's been a lot of conversation about stimulus checks and inflation. It's a popular argument that repeated federal stimulus money has accelerated inflation rates. Peterson explains this proposal is very different than federal COVID checks.
Inflation ultimately is caused by too much money in the system, and that is controlled by the central bank. What we're talking about here is fiscal policy spending, and that does not have much impact on inflation.
So, unlike the federal government printing more money for checks, the proposal in Idaho is to return tax dollars.
The way to look at this is they're reallocating spending. They're not creating new money the way the central bank does and injecting it into the economy. So, and these kind of rebate checks these kinds of processes are self-limiting by their nature. And so I don't see this as being inflationary or causing inflation.
So, fears of the rebate program worsening inflation in Idaho seem unfounded. The proposed legislation isn't a simple fix to the inflation issue Idahoans are seeing, but Peterson says it is impactful, especially for lower-income families.
The rebates going to families will help offset the loss of real income as a result of the overall inflation rate, which I indicated there's some simplifying assumptions, but for a typical family, the loss of purchasing power, if this 8.5% holds out year-round for the entire year, will be around $5,000.
So what could the real impact of rebate checks look like in terms of addressing inflation? Could they drive inflation down across Idaho? On a large scale, it appears that won't be the case. However, on the individual or family level, extra money from rebate checks in the pockets of Idahoans could make a big difference right now. Peterson has two easy examples.
Food prices, if we look at food and energy, which impact all Idaho families, but especially the low-income families, food is now hovering around 11% increase if it holds the whole year. So this could be very helpful to consumer food budgets. And then, as we all know, although gas prices are falling, it still shows a 32.9% increase over where it was a year ago.
Experts like Peterson do caution, in general, about creating new government investment programs as the American economy does tread towards economic downturn. However, just the rebate check concept as a part of this package is considered low risk.
The rebate part of this especially is very low risk, right? It's not going to contribute to inflation, and it's going to help out Idaho families. In a sense, they're getting some of their tax dollars back. So it's hard to argue with it, right?
And to be clear here, the rebate checks are not a done deal. Lawmakers will need to approve it this week. And there appears to be enough support among lawmakers based on the co-sponsors of the pending legislation, but we will see later this week. But all this does bring up a question that I've seen really talked about over the last few years since this was announced. And we're going to go to a question right now from Peggy. She writes to us, #the208. Well, retired folks who no longer pay taxes receive any part of the refund if it is approved to give back any of the billions. And this is a big question. Really, everything depends on your situation, but here's what we can tell you, and this is what Governor Little's office told me a few minutes ago. Seniors who do not file state income taxes are eligible for the minimum rebate if they applied for the grocery tax credit. So even if you didn't file your income taxes and you filed Form 24, which we're going to show you right now, you are eligible for this. And here is that Form 24. It may look familiar. This is what you're using if you're 65 and older and you don't apply and have your income taxes filed through the state because maybe you're on Social Security, something like that. Maybe you don't have state income taxes to report. You do still fill out this Form 24 to get your grocery tax credit. So Brian, long story short, even if you don't file income taxes in Idaho, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get a piece of the pie here. Again, though, it's what you filed for 2020. If you have any questions about this, we have all the info right now, ktvb.com.
So the answer to the question is, it is a political ploy, or is it actually helping families? The answer is yes and yes, because they could have done this. Well, I guess they could have done it a couple months ago, but at that point, we didn't know we had nearly $2 billion in surplus.
Right. So this will be helping some families. If this is a political play, it's up for you to decide. Could it have waited? Could it have not waited? Well, it's in the eye of the beholder.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so what about this special session and the funding dedicated to education? Governor Little has proposed what he's touting as the largest investment into K-12 public education in state history, $410 million. And if passed, $330 million is going to go towards K-12 schools. The other $80 million is going to go toward post-secondary training for in-demand careers. And those amounts would increase every year by about 3% to keep up with what we just talked about, inflation. On Friday, we got a question from Karen in Boise. So the money that Governor Little and the legislature are giving to public education from the surplus, will that make up for the amount that was taken away from their budget reductions last year? Well, back in 2021. First, the giving will have to come after the approving. This bill needs to pass both the House and the Senate and the signature from the governor, but these things don't usually come together, these special sessions, without some sort of knowing how it's all going to end kind of thing. So all of it is expected to happen. But to Karen's point, lawmakers did just cut $2.5 million from higher education 2 sessions ago, Idaho's 4 public universities, over created concerns of critical race theory being taught there. So yes, there will be more money for colleges and trade schools, but specifically for in-demand careers. So it's not just here's your money back plus more, here's money back, but you got to use it specifically. And it's an increase all around because this year lawmakers approved a $3.4 billion budget for K-12 schools. And this, of course, is going to be an increase of that was an increase of about 11% over the year before. So yes, records were set for education funding during the 3-month regular session, and they're about to set it again in just one day this week.